All right, so we have about, is this on? Yes, it's on. We have about primal branding, and this theory talks about how you need to focus on what your customers are saying about your service or product, and not so much about the quality of that product or service. So that's like one of the main points, and the other main points is that you need to create a community around your product or service, and for this community, it's the quality of the community and not the quantity of the community that's important. And when talking about this, he talks about how it's not about just having a logo or a website or some like physical, like visual representation of your brand. It's because this representation is embedded in some understanding of what the logo means. So he talks about how a cube is just a cube and it has no meaning. And the same counts for example, for Apple's logo, which is just an apple. And if we didn't associate it with everything that Apple stands for and all the interaction we've had with apples, then that apple would have no meaning. So that's like his main argument. And yeah, so yeah. Yeah. Do you want to continue?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Can you do that?
Yeah.
So this is very official. He has these 7 points. He says that brand community, as Sina said, is the most important, and brand community is a belief system. So we have, as customers or as a part of the community, we need to believe in these different things. And that's why it's called the belief system. And to make up the belief system, there is seven criteria, so 7 things. And the first one is creation of story. Like to create, you have to have an inspiring story. He gives the example of Steve Jobs. So you need a narrative in that way, sort of like the entrepreneur as the hero. Creed. I sort of translated that for myself as credentials in a sort of way. It's not credential, it's core principles, it's values, it's the purpose, it's everything that's embedded in your company, sort of in your mission and your everyday interactions. Icons are signs, which is embedded with meaning, like Sina said, a logo. The M for McDonald's is something that we understand is McDonald's. So that's how we differentiate between the different brands. And it's something that we use to navigate with. Then we have rituals, which is actions that either we or we as customers or as a part of the community or as a brand can do. It can be actions, sort of hosting a party where you as a part of the community participate, or it can be like the interface of an app. So it's every time that you encounter the brand in either a positive or a negative way that either enhances the brand vitality or it decreases the brand vitality. Then we have the lexicon, which is word used in association in relation to the brand to identify the community. For instance, Starbucks uses very long definitions of a skinny deep latte something, which nobody really knows, and that's a part of their community, that if you are in the know, you know of these words. Then there are the non-believers, and non-believers are people who either disagrees or do not believe in your community. It also helps differentiate who you are as a brand. It's because it says like, we are not those people, we are these people. So it also helps differentiate that. Then there is the 7th point, which is the leader. It's the star of the show. It's sort of like Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel. It is also a part of the creation of the story, like Steve Jobs. It is the person who are in charge of everything and sort of becomes the symbol of the brand. So that was the theory.
Yeah.
Do we have anything to add?
Only that, the theory says that these 7 points is how we evaluate a brand and how we kind of identify with it or decide if we like it or not. And that's why all seven of them is important. So it's like a combination of all of it that ends up deciding if we want to engage or not engage with that brand. Yeah, I think
That's what we have.
You can just leave this up there. It's
Yeah.
and yeah, we continue to draw perspective from this to our YouTube channel, which was the Remulats, and yeah, the creation story or the narrative in our case was the cultural differences, and we tried to make to give Armin the experience of some of the things we do in our culture that we can see is a bit weird for us. So he's kind of our Carl Pilkington, if anybody knows that show, and if we move on to the creed, or as we interpret it, more of as a faith or belief, we didn't really get to that point because that we also touched upon it early in the class. We didn't really establish a continuous pattern to make people come back and establish this faith around our brand or YouTube channel. In terms of icon, we kind of talked about how it can overlap with the rituals, and our icons was at the start of the videos we had. We had a hymn, or like this melody that played together with our two flags and our icon, and we had the Remulets in a certain font, which we got from another channel also called something with Lad, where we took the same font, so we can draw perspective from that. And yeah, and another icon, we didn't, again, how it overlaps with the rituals. Armin always tried to say something in Danish, which was, not to put him out there, but it was an element, and we wanted to make it an icon that was a part of our channel, which is also why it can be perspectivated to the rituals. And in terms of rituals, we had an ironic way of interacting with users on our channel. When people interacted with us in the comments, the way we answered them was not the answer they wanted to hear all the time, and if it was we tried to do it with a funny twist. You would adjust whether that worked. We also had a rating system in our video where we tried to rate all the activities we went through, and it was again with an ironic touch where we didn't really have a set rating system. We kind of changed it, and the rating didn't really give the viewer any insight to whether the event we was undertaking was worth anything really. So that was again the ironic ritual we tried to incorporate in every video. The pagans or the non-believers, we did have one dislike on one of our videos which we tried to respond to in our last video, where again we had an ironic twist to it, but we also established that that we didn't really reach a sufficient scale to evaluate on disbelievers or the pagans. Well, we didn't really have any, but that's again what we established. The sacred words, in terms of that, we used a lot of pop cultural jargon in our videos. We used some memes to cut the scenes, so which meant that we targeted a certain target group, which was around our age or maybe a bit younger actually. At last we had the leader, which is South to Show, which was, as some of you might have seen, it was Armin, because it kind of revolved around him, since we were 3 Danes and 1 Brit, and he was the one who had to experience the different cultures, and he was also the person who was in focus most of the time during the videos.
Thank you. So we are going on with the criticism. It was not so easy actually to find like good criticism on this model, because of course it's like pretty powerful, and when you look up text, for example, in the internet, many people write only in favor of this model. But we found 3 main parts that could be criticized in that model. And the first one is that we found out, or we actually agreed on, that communities are fragile. And this model actually relies on a really stable community. And we think like in times right now at YouTube, for example, when switching costs are pretty low and there's like a lot of alternatives, that this part of like this loyalty is not there, or like it's like lower than this model actually relied on. And therefore we think could be like a criticism on the model. Do you want to go on with the next one?
Yeah, that's hard. So we have another one about the leader one. So this is basically the whole model is kind of centered around the idea of the traditional one leader kind of community or system, and there are just a lot of different hierarchy models in different kind of companies now, and that's where this system doesn't really fit anymore. So yeah. And and then the last one that we have is that it kind of is more a criticism of the narrative surrounding primal branding, that you can follow all these 7 steps, but it doesn't really guarantee you to be a successful brand in general, because just such an oversaturation in general. So yeah.
So we thought like that could be like a possible reason that you may start with that model and really build a great brand that is like perfectly fit to the model, but that you may have to take another road in the beginning that is against your belief or like against your principles to get or gain more attention, and then maybe switch it later. And we saw that in many different YouTube channels. I think we all experience it as well with our YouTube channels, that you sometimes, for example, have to do collaborations even if they don't fit to your channel, in order to get more attention, and then later maybe switch your content again.
And maybe one sort of reflection that I would add is when you compare this to psychological sense of community, then you see that this doesn't really touch on that at all. Like, how do people feel? What is it? Why are they? What motivates them? Like the psychological aspect of why people participate in a community doesn't really touch. They reduce it to, well, it's just a system they believe in. So yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Otherwise, fantastic, and give them a hand.
I think we have to